Chapter 6.7, The Renaissance, Part 4. Okay, so we're going to get into the late Renaissance and Mannerism. So there's a lot of changes going on down here. Kind of reveal my notes here, but Pope Clement VII, one of Julius's successors, remember Pope Julius in the Renaissance, he had to crown a Spaniard, King Charles, as Holy Roman Emperor in 1530. Now, the Roman Empire never really ceased to exist. It kind of mutated. I don't know if that's super clear through the Middle Ages, but that it still exists, but it gets cut up and it gets moved around. It's never as large. Oh goodness, it's hard to show. There's a really good time release map. I think I'll show you on YouTube. It's really good, but it'll kind of explain. So Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo da Vinci are looked at as the height of Renaissance and the height of painting, and nothing could ever be that good. It's perfection. What can you do? But there are a lot of people that pursue, especially Michelangelo's painting style, and you'll see this, I think, pretty readily once we look at the work. The compositions get more chaotic. That's expressing, and I don't know how consciously or unconsciously it is, but it's expressing the upheaval at the time, because we get into the Reformation, Counter-Reformation, of course the Spaniard, who is now in charge instead of the Italians, becomes, kind of heated and complicated. And then we get away from the believable reality in the paintings. So we're going to get in some exaggerated poses, and this is the entombment, otherwise known as the deposition, when they take Christ off of the cross and put him into the tomb. And there's many depictions of this throughout the Renaissance, probably quite a bit in the Middle Ages and elsewhere as well. This one is much more stylized, and Christ's body is being turned. The figures are sort of floating. They're touching the ground, but just barely. But we don't exactly know what these people are doing. Are they floating? What's happening? Part of the issue with this strange color you're looking at, is that this painting was cleaned, and the pigments were sort of reapplied and retouched up, and the glazing is missing. So it's very hard to know when you clean up painting what the original intention was, especially when there's glazing, because that's sort of this cover coating. And so anyway, these strange colors that you're seeing may or may not be correct. We don't really know. Oil on wood. So we have a Mannerist depiction of the deposition scene, is the entombment, taken down from the cross and then put into the tomb. It's an unstable composition. We have a swirling pattern moving throughout the composition. Overly muscular figures, now that comes from Leonardo, and these striking colors. Now the colors probably were quite bright and strong, but what we're seeing may or may not be correct. We don't know. Sense of anxiety and disorder. Then we get into El Greco. Now El Greco, for a lot of people, is sort of the precursor to the modernists. It gets really strange. So we're still in Mannerist. This is the Laocoon, and this is in this is the depiction of the Greek scene that we saw previously. I'm going to skip ahead. The Mannerists were influenced, and the Renaissance artists too, by Hellenistic Greek work, because this is, remember, this is a Roman copy. It's complicated, right? There was a bronze Greek sculpture, and it was probably made at Pergamon, and then it was brought to Italy, right? The Roman Empire, and then they copied it in marble, and thank God they did, because if they hadn't copied it in marble, the bronze has long since been melted down. We'd have no reference to this image. So this is at the Vatican Museum, so you can see this. I don't exactly remember the location where it is. It's not in St. Peter's, but anyway, this depiction of this Greek myth. So we're looking at this. So the Mannerists are thinking about these twisted poses and these gyrations with a figure, But El Greco, oh my goodness, this gets really abstracted and strange. It almost looks like a Picasso. El Greco is called this because his true name, he's from Greece, is and I'm forgetting what it is. Sorry, I'm really having a rough week. Dominikos Theotokopoulos. Okay, so he was born in 1541. He dies in 1614. So this is shortly before his death. But you see the Laocoon here, the two sons, struggling with the snake sent by Poseidon. And there's part of the snake right here. This is a separate snake, but it's a lot of wrapping around and entwinement here. Really wild, almost like romantic painting with these clouds. It's very strange. It becomes really quite wild. So he worked in Venice and Rome before he moved to Spain. He's kind of considered a Spanish painter for the most part. It's kind of hard to say. He's the Greek. El Greco means the Greek, but he's kind of a lot of his work is in Spain. This one is in the National Gallery in D.C. I can't remember. I've seen it and I can't recall, but some of his work is in the Prado. So it depicts our Greek myth and is elongated and distorted, expressionistic use of color and modeling. So he's predating Expressionism, Impressionism, Romanticism by 200 years here. Okay, another Mannerist painter, Sofonisba Angisola, a portrait of the artist's sister playing chess. Now, don't they look realistic? Oh my goodness, these really are portraits. So we're not as stylized as some of these other people. We're trying to think about real people. And the Queen of Spain appointed her in certain times. So a lot of times you still have to be in the court, right? And do works. But look at how, like, this could just be a snapshot on Instagram. It's so amazingly individualistic and interesting. So she's a female painter in the Mannerist era, and she's holding her own with this beautiful scene on the outdoors with the landscape in the background. So she's very much into the details, much happier, less distorted and strange, because she's dealing with the intimate family life here. All right, so Andrea Palladio, the Via Rotunda. Now, this piece is looking very Greek, right? Greco-Roman. It has its dome. It has its, entablature here. It has the columns. It has a portico here. It has a lot of elements. And the statues, of course, this was completed in 1580. So it's got a lot of hearkening back to the idea of a Roman temple, more specifically than a Greek, but it has the Ionic, Doric scrolls here, and it has a lot of hallmarks of classicism. And if you look at the floor plan here, we have a circle, we have a square, we have all these shapes that are important and primal to the idea of classic Greek architecture. It's on a hilltop with beautiful views, and the visitors look out from a central point in the courtyard. Balanced design, made up of circles, squares, and rectangles, and it's got 4 identical facades.